Okay, Shemiras Shabbos Kilchasa Sif Mem Daled. We're in the first parak. Sif Mem Daled. We continue the halachos of Bishul, and this is really going to wrap up the Blech cases, a lot of the Chazara, the Sina Lechatchila, different areas that we've been discussing at length. So says the Shemiras Shabbos Sif Mem Daled. Shtei Kederos Hamilas Agabi Ish. We have two pots on a fire. Achaz Agabi Chaverta. One on top of another. So you have a double decker. So you remove the bottom one. So what do you do with the top one now? You move the bottom one, the top one's going to fall. So you want to put it somewhere. You're not allowed to take the top one and put it down in the place of the bottom one. Even if it's hot and even if it's fully cooked, you're not allowed to move the top one onto the flame on the bottom. Even if it's covered. Even if they're both there on Friday. So if you start on Shabbos with a double decker, your top pot has a problem because he can't. Oh, very good. This is where he's going to come into the whole shmooze of different areas of the Blech. He's going to come into right here. It starts off Rav Neubert and he paskins. When I have two pots like this, the top pot cannot be moved down straight onto the Blech. So the case of Yaseh, what should he do? Put another pot on Put it have another pot. Let's say you don't have another pot. In look there kazu. Yeniach, fil b'Shabbos. Put an empty pot or a metal plate. Or tavnes afiyah or baking tray, afucha upside down al gabi eish. V'nichsek there, you're not allowed to put a top of it. V'usha tavshes abtech gdeira. Mavush kol tzarka. V'gam cham b'mixas. Ro'olel. So he just said, well, parenthetically, there's a star, and he says, if it's a large flame, if it's going to be malab in it, that's not so, and again, our mitzias. Now, one more parenthetical remark on the first page over here. He says, he reminds us constantly of this. You're not allowed to cover over even the top pot from all sides with towels and one as we have seen. And this is a classical issue that we've already spoken about, that when something is sitting on a heat source, you're not allowed to cover it over because then you've heat on the bottom, you've covered on the sides, and that is Hatzamana B'Davar HaMoisif Hevel. So what he just said is that even though when Shabbos begins, I have two hot pots, bottom one is directly on a blech, top one is on top of the bottom one, and the top one is hot and fully cooked, you're not allowed to move the top one onto the blech. Rather, you have to keep it in the current status, which is on top of an overturned pot. Says Ha'ara Kuf Chaf Hey, a very long and lengthy Ha'ara. And he begins by quoting, it's a Chazanish, Lamazayin Yud Aleph, V'chein Rosh HaMizalmin, Al Pi Simin Shin Yoches, V'zayin Echas. V'mkeim Nidan Avali Kamada Chadasha V'aser. He wants to say that to take that pot and put it straight on the blech, it's ki'ilu, a new placement, and it's aser. There's no difference between taking your pot from the fridge, taking the pot from the cabinet, taking the pot from on top of another pot. It was not on a blech when Shabbos began. Therefore, you're not allowed to put it on a blech on Shabbos. That's the pashtos la'alach. Vayin gam in the Har Tzvi, tel harim lachs bevashal shumistabik. Okay, so now we start. The Har Tzvi is misopik. Ayin sham metal sada. B'chazin isham sivkatin mefurash. The mismichal al gabo shari. So interesting, because Chazinish now is saying to move something from a matzav of samuch leish to al gabo leish is yes mutter. Tzarich leimar. The other Chazinish needed to clear al yain al gabe. So why by us is the Chazinish machmir? Take the top, put it on the bottom. Hainu, which goes to sham sivkat test. The geder al gabe gedera chomer mismicha. Zog the Chazinish. Geder al gabe gedera is worse than samuch leish, which, if you think about it, is a pelitic chiddush, because samuch usually is not that hot. It's samuch leish. Usually, samuch is the example of something that doesn't get yatz ledes by, and we say if it gets yatz ledes by. Here, kedei l'gabi kedei is it's getting straight heat. But zok the chazanish is chamer. V'chein benin the didan as. V'aydi yishleimer. So that's one way to learn at the Chazanish, and then there's nothing to talk about. Now, there's another way to learn of the Chazon Ish, which is going to be a one big Lishitas. That maybe it's a Chazon Ish Lishitas. Why? Because the Chazon Ish holds the Kol Chazara al Gabi Atanor, Kivisha Ikra Bishul al Gaba Zok the Chazon Ish. They do not, the Chazon Ish, Bnei Brak does not hold of a Blech. Why? Because the Ikr Bishul is on a oven. And therefore, Vafilu Mamed al Gabi Akisoy, even if you have a Blech, Zok the Chazon Ish, I don't care. Ein Akisoy Hafsik. Chazon Ish Lamzayin, very famously, and therefore the Chazon Ish Uladaitoi. Al Gaba, Hainu Al Gabi Hafsik Gedera, Ulechein Sharina Mismich Al Gaba. So the only way the Chazon Ish ever could fathom a heter is on top of another pot, because he never allows you on a blech. Now, you have to realize, if that's the way to learn the Chazon Ish, then it's no raya. Because we paskin, we can yes use a blech. So if the whole chumrah of the Chazon Ish is because to put on top of a blech is a problem, so maybe in our world, putting it from a top of a pot onto blech is not a problem. And now, so how are you going to learn the Chazon Ish? Because it's often. Oh, it's only when the kever tachtoina is going to be ish shein gufa. There's no blech. You're putting it straight down. Whereas, of course, if it would be a blech, then there would be makam lahakam. So he paskin this aser. He explains as a Chazon Ish. The Hartzvi is mistapek. He explains two reasons why it would be aser. In the second reason, if you don't hold of the Chomer Chazon Ish, which we generally do not, the Haraya, this whole sefer has been going with blechs the whole time, then it would be mutter. Now he continues, Shamati V'Shem Zaman Arbach Litin Tam Al Mashe B'Harbi Mekaymes Nagulakabdan. This is very interesting. So far, in all of the Shemiras Shabbos that we've learned, I don't believe we've seen this nusach. Usually you have a chumrah, you have a kula, your Shlomo Zalman is mistapik lahakel. He says you could be makel. Here he's explaining the minhag of kula. He himself wasn't so happy about it. The Chazon Ish, the Shlomo Zalman himself, paskin l'chomra. But now he says the velt is makel. Let me tell you why. The key even chikamim not let's say you take off a pot. Shabbat mutlach zira afilu b'Shabbos. Whoa. You take off a pot on Friday, you're allowed to put it on an oven on Shabbos? Ki bazeh einanu cholkin al Ran. This is the very famous sheet of the Ran, that Isra Chazara is only an Erev Shabbos. Zok the Ran, that we who argue on the Ran, says Rav Shlomo Zalman, even if you take it off on Friday, you'd be allowed to put it on Shabbos. Hamuva b'Ramah, Semin Reish and Gimel Sef Beis, Dava Bach, Kira medayik me'atur shecholik al ram v'sever shall didan im nalto me'erev Shabbos osur lachzer b'Shabbos kol makom l'sheni shall ram moshkel to letir al chazar mashma to b'zeh gam anu seim Quran. This would be masking to the Ran that there would be no iser. V'chein nira me'abri megadim u'dever mishtabrua shartzian v'chein v'ur shulchan aruch harav sif yudalid Chazon Ish Avada doesn't hold of this. Fine. So what he just said is that anytime a pot starts Shabbos on a flame, it's out of the rules of Chazara. You can do whatever you want. That's what he wants to learn, how we would potentially learn out from the Ran. Now this is where, so that's one reason to be Mekel. Why is the Vel Mekel to take the pot from the top and put it down? Because it started Shabbos on a flame, you're allowed to put it on a flame. Number one. Number two, what comes out of all this? Let's say on Shabbos, you have a pot on a blech, and you take it and you put it on top of a kedera, a pot, shalish. Why? I'm gonna ask zero. You want to put it back? We have a miracle now. It's as if you're holding it. Because you don't really remove from the ish entirely. Which is near kilo asich taitim lahachsir. So what does that mean? That means you can Friday night take your soup. It's on a blech. You could serve your soup. Now you don't want to put it back in the blech because you're afraid it's going to burn. It's going to boil out. So you know what you're going to do with it? You're going to take it and you're going to have your cholent pot somehow. It's going to be, make a straight top of your cholent pot. And you're going to put your soup up there. Keep it up as warm. Shabbos morning, you want your soup hot again. You take it back to the blech, right on top of the ish. Mutagamar Zok the Rebbe. Why? not mutagamra. He explains that people are making why? Because you never mesiach daitai from putting it back onto the flame. It's what we would call a holding area. The longest of oida biyada, says Shemiras Shabbos, is that you're not mesiach daitai. So if without holding on to it, I figured out a way to not be mesiach daitai. How is that? By putting it on an overturned pot, it would be okay. You want to go into Blech now?
Why can't I take that further and just put it down the counter?
So. Well, he's in the middle. Let the Rebbe talk. Umikivan shekach. Once we hold of this, gam yishloimar. I can tell you as well. Te'im b'tchila, if originally kisheheser sakadera, when you remove the pam in aish b'yoyim, ve'amida gabi kadera. Now he's saying even on Friday. So the Lafi, what I just said, on Friday I took it and I put it on top of another pot. Now I understand why on the next day the chashiv chazara v'shari. Mayritik. Shamati v'Shemiras Shabbos. Yes, and that's the same. Now we just said that Sif Memdala that paskin it's usher. This is why the belt is meiko. In which one? To go back? No. No. Yes. That's what he wants to say. He wants to say that if you went on Erev Shabbos onto a Hefsek Kedera, anything, Hefsek Kedera has a lumdus of a holding area, then you could take it and put it back straight on top of the blech. Now, which is, by the way, that Sif Mem Dalet said also, he's explaining why no agulahak. Continues, Shemati Shemiras Shabbos, ki mistaver. Shavim ha'isir magabe ish. Let's say you took something off of a flame. V'amdam ad al gabe karka. And you put it down, Meir, I think this might be what you were saying. And you put it down for a moment on the karka. Mikol makoim, im nisbash lekoroi, v'dayan lo nistan legamri, lemin hagenu. We basking kiramad, v'shabes atzom mishanin, mimakom lamakom, she'yosecham umi tashel gam belach. That we move things around in the heat sources. Shabbat mutter b'erev Shabbos like via malgabe karka. On Erev Shabbos, you could boil up your soup, take it off the oven, put it on the counter, ulehemid asigedera al gabi kedera, then put it on top of a pot, acheres al grufa ktuma, al das al yirda sebi Shabbos lamata, and the next day put it down. Ki harida me'aish al gabi karka me'erev Shabbos lo'ev b'chlal because Shabbos chadas ve'in zedam b'chlal la'arida shel Shabbos. So Zok the Rebbe, like you just said, you can even have a few moments that it's on the Eish B'chlal, because it's all ala derech. V'al bizeh, asi shaber machnoigin lahaver k'deros b'Shabbos lagabe kira keduma mimakol lemaka. Now, let's go into a blech. Now you have a blech, and you have different areas out of your blech, and you want to know what's going on. People are moving things around indiscriminately. Zakur Shemiras Shabbos, asi shapir machnoigin lahaver k'deros b'Shabbos lagabe kira keduma makom lemakom. Vein boitkin is a makom risha im hu makom sheyatz let it. You don't check, is it hot? V'hainu misham. You're taking from of Eish B'erev Shabbos. Al das achzir l'machar gabi kira keduma. V'amde kol hazman, and the whole time. B'makom shemamidim b'kavana. Why is it there? To keep it lishmar al ha'chaim. Ein zeh chashem kisilik das min chazara. So you never were misalik your das. And therefore, agabe so will come out that one could come in Erev Shabbos, and you have a blech, and you have one flame on. You take whatever you want, you throw it all onto the blech. Everything has to start off hot. It's a little kinich. Everything has to start off hot. You can't just throw it all on the blech indiscriminately, because if it started on a non-yatzoledis area and it wasn't hot, you'd run into an issue. But once which stam wouldn't work, so it would never get hot afterwards. But basically, you get everything hot before Shabbos, and then you put the blech on the oven, you put on one flame, all your food, your whole ganze Shabbos is sitting on the blech. Parts are hot, parts are not so hot, parts he has to let this buy. He's buying from a Shitas Aran that holds the only Isser of Chazar is on Erev Shabbos. Now, it's a very complicated thing to understand what that means in English. The words I said is what it means, and how do we understand that is complicated. That's what the Ran holds. But on Shabbos, once it starts Shabbos on a flame, you got to do what you want with it. You got to do what you want with it, even if afterwards it comes off. That's the famous Shita Saran. How to understand it is complicated. We're not getting involved in it. But from that Shita, Yachid, and how we argue on that Shita Yachid, he comes up with this Maifis, and he wants to say, together with the Lamdis, that it's called Eideh B'Yadai, and therefore it's fine. He continues Moshe since Eliezer. They say therefore you can take the top, put it down. Agabe grufa uke tuma. So lahalacha lemaisa, I don't believe we could say that this is lechatchila because lemaisa the Shemiras Shabbos paskind that Shemiras Shabbos paskind you shouldn't do lechatchila. However, if someone wants to know that they know people that do this, and yeah, Shabbos starts, and I'll tell you where this is a very common case. People do it. What do you say? Yeah, that you could do. But I'm saying you'll see people that will start Shabbos. They'll have the soup pot. On top of the soup pot will be a kugel, and then they'll serve the soup, and they'll take the kugel and put it right down in the blech. And now, based on Memdal and Mechatesi, that's also Gomer. Now we understand it, because where did that kugel originally come from? The oven. Came out of the oven and went on top of the soup pot. Now that I serve the soup, I could put it down. That is the kula. We'll pick it up from here.